Now, a federal high court sitting in Lagos has ordered the extension of the deadline for National Identity Number (NIN) by 2 months. Justice M.A. Oyetenu granted the extension while delivering a ruling in a suit filed by human rights lawyer Monday Ubani against the federal government. Attorney General of the Federation, Nigeria Communications Commission (NCC), and the Minister of Communications and Digital Economy. In the suit, Ubani had contended that the initial 2 weeks ultimatum given to telecommunications operators to block SIM cards of Nigerians who have not registered their SIM card with NIN, if allowed, will infringe on this constitutionality, a guaranteed right to freedom of expression, right to own movable property, and right to life. He therefore prayed the court for an order halting the said ultimatum and extending the deadline. For more on this, we have Monday Ubani with us now. Okay, a lawyer and the second Vice President, Nigerian Bar Association, NBA. Good to have you, Monday Ubani. Okay, so maybe I'll start by saying, if you can hear me, congratulations on having won your suit. But would you say this has gone far enough? Do you feel more can be done to not seem to be putting a burden on the citizens to comply with what is essentially of national benefit?
Yes, my view is that we need to do much. By the grace of God, I should be getting the judgment of the court today, and I will do a personal letter to the Minister of Communication and Digital Economy, asking him to ensure that he review the case of registration of Nigerians. And if many have not actually registered, it is imperative and important that they should extend the time further in order to allow Nigerians not to suffer. Nigerians are going through trauma, harrowing experience, daily in order to register for something that is clearly a national duty. And they don't need to do all that in order to suffer Nigerians. So my view, my personal views, despite the fact that the court has extended the time with 2 months, I think that the federal government can do better by allowing further time so that many Nigerians will be registered. I don't even want a situation where JAM, because JAM now is now making it a condition precedent that you have to have the name before you can write for JAM in June. That again is clearly unlawful. It's a breach of contract. As at the time they were picking the form, nobody told them that this is a condition precedent for you to write JAM. So I don't want Nigerians to be put into harrowing experience, into as if they are suffering, they are deriving joy in seeing Nigerians suffer. No. I want government to be very lenient and show some level of love to the citizens in carrying out some of the policies they have enunciated. No doubt it's a beautiful policy so that we can have ourselves on database, which is what other nations have done. But must we go through this harrowing experience in order to accomplish this? That is a mega question that everyone should answer.
Yes, Mr. Ubani. So there are different issues here. There is the issue of getting a NIN, which is the national identification number, and there's the linkage with your SIM. For those who do not understand, why was this important to you, and what exactly were your prayers that were granted by the court? That's one issue. The second question I'd like to ask you is advocacy in democracy through the courts. More often than not, we see the likes of SERAP, perhaps only SERAP, doing that, holding the government to account on its policies through the courts. As the second vice president of the NBA and a former branch chairman, why is this so? Why don't we have enough advocacy through the courts? Doesn't this help to build the law? And what can we do to improve it?
Yeah, let me start with the first question that you put across. What happened was that at the time we were registering our SIM card, I don't think there was a requirement that at a point in time, if your SIM card is not linked to NIN, then your number will be deactivated. There was no such contract. There was no such agreement. But along the line, the government came up with this policy that everyone must be registered. As a Nigerian, you're supposed to have a particular number you're identified with. It's a very good, lofty, and very commendable idea and policy, which we have been advocating for a very long time. But we don't see the connection between having a NIN and then your card, your SIM card that you have already registered prior to the time that this government policy came into place. And so when they now gave an ultimatum and a deadline that if they don't get a NIN, then your number will be deactivated, I felt that was clearly a threat to the rights of myself as a citizen and many other Nigerians. So that was the reason why I had to go to court. And then the prayers that I asked the court to grant is that, one, that this policy is clearly a threat to my right of freedom of expression. That if you take away my SIM card, you have denied me the opportunity to freely express myself. Without my SIM card, I can't even enter into this conversation that I'm having with your revered and respected television house. And so you will deny me that opportunity if you deactivate me. And then secondly is that my right to own a property. The law says my property can only be taken away in a manner that is prescribed by law. As long as that card belongs to me, you cannot take it away by virtue of a government policy that just as in a fiat, you take it away by that government policy. I felt that again is a threat. Then the third one was the issue of threat to my life. If you ask me to get clustered in a particular environment, all in a bid to get an identification number, contrary to all the non-protocols we are observing due to this COVID era, then you are breaching my right to life. So I felt these are the things that the court should be in a position to pronounce. And then I now say, look, I love the idea of having an identification number, but should we make it in such a manner that people will undergo some level of harrowing experience? Why don't you extend the deadline to at least a year or any time that the court finds very suitable? So the court had to look at my prayers and what I'm requesting for and say, well, let's give the government 2 months further extension for them to allow Nigerians to register, knowing fully where the difficulties in Nigeria are really encountering. So that is actually what I asked for, and the court agreed with me. The court agreed with all the allegations that are made against the government, against the issue of right of my freedom of expression, right to own my property, and the right to life. The court agreed that if the government goes with that policy, it's clearly a threat, and then went ahead and extended the deadline now by 2 months. Now, as to the second question, the issue of public interest litigation is very dear to Nigerian Bar Association. By the way, I was a former vice president of MBA, not that I'm the current one. I was once the chairman of Nigerian Bar Association. There's somebody now that is occupying the position of vice presidency of the bar. Presently, I was a former. Now, we feel in the MBA that every lawyer must be an advocate for public issue. In fact, this year in May, between the 23rd of May to 26th of May, the Nigerian Bar Association, with a section that they call SPIDEL, section on public interest and development law, will be organizing a conference. And we are talking about what is the importance of public interest in governance. We must use the court, most of the time, not going through war, carrying arms and ammunition in order to allow government to change some of their policies. Or when they're not obeying the law, the court says we must go to court in order to ensure that government obeys the law they have enacted. And so most of us have taken that route. And this is the first one. I have so many other cases that are happening against the government. One of them is the bogus salaries and allowances that the members of National Assembly are earning. And I've gone to court. That particular case is reserved for judgment sometime in June. And so many others have also gone to court over, because we feel that we must engage vigorously in advocacy in order to correct some of the anomalies in the system. And there are so many of them. Governments sometimes are so lawless and they carry out with so much impunity. But there must be people who will say, oh, we can't do it this way. We must follow law. We must follow our laws we have enacted. We must not be lawless in carrying out government policy. We must also put into consideration the interest of the people. And so the setup is doing it well. Some of us also are, somebody like Femi Falana, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, has engaged several times on public interest matter. As I said earlier, there's going to be a conference and many lawyers and public interest speakers will be there in order to address this issue of public interest in governance. So advocacy is one area we must begin to explore in order to get government to act in accordance with the law. It's a very wonderful question you have asked, and I can assure you that Nigerian Bar Association, under a section called SPIDEL, is doing so much in order to ensure that government obeys their law and do the right thing for citizens of the country.
Yes, and it's very encouraging to hear that people such as yourself are engaging in that process. But I just also want to ask, with regards to when you said the court agree with all your prayers, and especially when it has to do with taking away your rights, and an extension, if they granted an extension at the end of all of that, it's not tantamount to a revocation. So they're still saying at the end of that period, if I get you right, they still hold they still hold the power to cut you off if you haven't complied. So that's one question. The other question is, there's a core issue you bring up here, which has to do with procedures and linked to the dignity, or do you say civility, of the way our system runs. So, for example, you take the vaccination process. Is there a way we can deal with this thing holistically and say, can we think through the processes we put our citizens through in the interest of preserving some form of dignity for our citizens rather than putting them through several hoops as though they were cattle?
Very, very important question. And now, concerning the first one you asked, and the issue of the 2 months extension that the court has actually granted, the point is that the court cannot give you what you do not ask for. Ordinarily, I would have, contested the constitutionality and the legality of the entire process of asking NIM to be linked to SIM card. There is no basis for it. There is no basis. But since I am an advocate of people, having, database, we should have database of all Nigerians. That's why I didn't go to issue of attacking the constitutionality or the legality of even NIM registration in the first place or linking it to SIM. If I have asked the court to declare it illegal, that there is no such linkage, the court would have probably granted that. But what I asked for was, I recognize the fact that Nigeria has the right, to actually ask Nigerians to be registered, because one, for security reasons, one, even for economic planning. So many advantages we will derive in having ourselves on database. Very, very much. So I don't have any problem with that. But I'm saying that in carrying out that policy, Nigeria must not be made to undergo such a harrowing experience. Now, if you do that, then you don't have the citizens in consideration in governance. You must do it in such a manner that shows that we are civil and that we recognize also that the people remain the sovereign. They are the ones that we are doing anything we are doing on their behalf. And so we must make sure that this is done. So the court felt, 2 months is okay, but I asked for a year or any other time that the court considered to be fit and proper. But the court felt that 2 months, is enough. But to me, it's not enough. And I will want government to actually, I'm going to write them a letter that, look, even these 2 months, after the expiration, try to examine this matter, whether many Nigerians have actually been registered. And if many have not registered, what is the purpose of cutting them off? What is the purpose of denying them their right of freedom of expression? What is the purpose of taking away their property they have acquired, which was not, and the condition that you are now imposing wasn't there as at the time they were registering? So I still have to write a letter, a covering letter to the minister in order to take this particular matter into consideration, even after the 2 months that the court has actually asked for. Then considering the issue of holistic view of government policy, I think that we must have alert citizens. We owe this country a duty in order to ensure that people who we have elected must do things in accordance with the law, must put us into consideration. We are the priority. It is about the people. Governance is about the people. It's not about the leaders. Okay. The leaders are elected there by the people. So whatever you are doing, you must have the people in consideration. The moment you begin to treat people like animals, then we have a right to query and question the legality of such actions. Yes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Monday Ubani, for sharing your thoughts with us on Newsday. Much appreciated.